Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this month's BookBlast Translation Book Club, at which we are featuring the National Telepathy by Roque Larraquy, out with Charco Press. We are extremely lucky to have the translator Frank Wynne here with us. A heavyweight translator of contemporary French and Spanish literature, he has translated authors Michel Houellebecq, Modiano, Frédéric Beigbeder, Virginie Despentes, Pierre, Lemaitre, and Jean-Patrick Manchette, among others. He has been awarded many translation prizes and has frequently been shortlisted.
How would you define the difference between the Spanish and the Hispanic?
The languages are completely different. And I mean, the languages in Latin America are very different from one another. So Argentina is very different from Colombia, which is very different from Peru.
Interesting.
Yeah. But also, I mean, Peruvian Spanish and Mexican Spanish, both are inflected with local languages and a lot to the north and whatever. Whereas many of the other countries, Argentina, for example, is not. I mean, in fact, listening to people speak Argentinian Spanish, you'd think they were speaking either Portuguese or Italian.
Yeah,
really.
It sounds remotely like Spanish.
Well, so now you were talking about Argentinian Spanish, and this, the National Telepathy, is by an Argentinian writer, Roque Larraquy, who actually founded the first ever creative writing school in Argentina. So, and LitHub, if I don't know if people are subscribed to LitHub, very popular, big American literary webzine, they have included the National Telepathy in their roundup of their favourite reads of 2025, because it was published in February this year. So this is what they had to say. Looking back over my reading this year, I had a clear preference for strange novels in translation, and the National Telepathy was one of my favourites. It's a funny, weird, satirical book about capitalist exploitation, gender anxieties, a sloth that opens up an intensely psychedelic and erotic telepathic connection between people, making them horny. So there we are. It's a jolly Christmas read. Yes, so it is a strange and unusual book. And how many of you have read it? For those who haven't, essentially it's in 30s Buenos Aires. A tycoon decides he is going to. He ships in a whole lot of Indians from the Peruvian jungle. The Amazon, of course, Amazon spreads everywhere, and he's going to open a human zoo. Thank you very much. Which is something that used to happen in colonial countries. Wow. Horrible. So, humans would be like exhibited, like. So, but then it all goes pear-shaped because of bureaucratic hold-up. So they end up being holed up in his frightfully smart flat, in a smart
Recoleta.
And then one of the women freaks.
In Buenos Aires.
Exactly, and she freaks out and ends up in Harrods, which of course is in Buenos Aires. And ends
Not
up
anymore. They
window
finally closed it about 10 years ago. But yes.
I mean, so it has a slightly deranged Baroque aspect to it. It's both authoritarian and ridiculous. So what is very interesting, the language, though it's through the eyes to begin with of the autocrat, the tycoon. So he's very deprecating and racist, basically. But then it's also one of his assistants later. And then there's all this administrative. So there's an amazing mixture of language. It's bureaucratic, it's occult, it's scientific, it's deadpan comic, because it is awful. You feel bad because you're laughing and it's so grotesque, and the suffering. So it's like, in all the stuff that comes with the Indians, there is this shell with a sloth in it. And when it scratches you, and then you start having extraordinary fantasies and sexual urges and all the rest. And then in the end, it's taken over by the state apparatus as a form of control. So there's a perilous angle. But so Frank, so how you were sent this book? Did you know Larraquy, the language, the story, the research?
So I was asked.
Tell us a bit about
I was asked to do it. It was turned down by a number of publishers, and it was proposed by a number of translators. And what many of the publishers couldn't get their head around is the fact that there are racist characters in the book, but then the entire book is about the racist characters. So I couldn't understand why that was the problem. I mean, it is quite clear that they're racist, that what they're attempting to do is a form of, cultural hegemony to set up this anthropological park in which
that's
they will
anthropological park. He doesn't call it human zoo.
From, a variety of places around the world, and they're debating whether or not there are original tribes in Russia, in the tundra and whatever, and they're very keen to get some black people, because actually what they've got from the Amazon jungle are just sort of brown people. They can't speak any of their language. They make no attempt. They are illegally shipped into Buenos Aires. And they arrive as cargo. So, of course, they have no...
Have they been hunted and caught?
They've been rounded up, effectively, and brought back. What they've been promised or what threats have been made were never told, because, of course, they don't speak a word of the language, and nobody has made any attempt to do so. Once they arrive in Buenos Aires, as Georgia was saying, I mean, your problem is that they're not people, they travel as cargo. So the only thing that they can do is put them in his apartment.
Yeah, because the Peruvian ambassador sort of...
I can't find the paperwork. I can't find the paperwork. And of course they don't have surnames.
He says it's all about names, that's right, they don't have names.
Well, surnames, of course, are have always been imposed by colonial countries. So, for example, in the Netherlands, people did not have surnames until the Spanish occupation of the Netherlands. So this naming convention is hugely important. Our racists who frequent the Jockey Club, so the Jockey Club, it exists in many countries, but is particularly popular in Argentina. So this is a leftover from the British occupation of the Argentine, as we used to call it. And the Jockey Club is... I mean, technically, yes, racing does go on there, but that's not the point of it. It's like a sort of very posh Rotary Club. It's like a cross between that and the Freemasons. So being part of the Jockey Club is hugely important. You can only do so by invitation, etc., etc. And it brings you close to power. And what they are primarily interested in, and what, of course, they are unaware of, is that what they have imported are not just what they consider to be things, people to look at, things to look at, but they have imported a power that they don't understand. So among their belongings is this sort of hollow tree trunk, which initially nobody knows is hollow. And
Sloth wakes up.
And it happens to contain an animal that is sacred to them, which is a sloth. So it came to me through Carolina, and I had been looking for, who works at Charco, had been looking for something that we might work on together. And when I got it, I said, this is strange, because I've had a couple of translators mention this to me, and they had tried to pitch it, and it's a bit racist. I said, well, people are a bit racist.
But it's fair now.
If you can't write novels about racism, then what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. They're so terrified of censorship and social media.
The worry was, people would conflate the opinions of the characters with the opinions of the author. No, you'd have to be fairly stupid to do that. But
and there are some stupid people on Goodreads.
Unfortunately,
this is so racist.
There is no.
Really, it's on Goodreads. Really, they say. I
don't know. My favourite comment ever. My favourite reviews on Goodreads always are, I couldn't identify with any of the characters. Okay, so do please tell me who you identified with in Crime and Punishment, or Lolita, or, I mean, we are not here to make you feel good about yourself, or for you to think, oh, I'm a bit like that. So this was really interesting when I got it, because it is so peculiar. So you have the beginning of what Argentina was and how it thought of itself as a country. It then ends with this long series of documents which are written by various regimes, I mean, mostly the Peronist regime, of how this extraordinary possible spiritual connection between people is taken and used against people. It's used for spying, it's used as a form of control, it's used as... And it degenerates into this sort of Kafkaesque, very bureaucratic kind of, how can we make this, how can we use this to our advantage?
Because you read it, so what was your take on all of that? How it came across?
It was quite difficult to sort of get to grips with it, I think. But I really enjoyed it, and it was that sort of the difference between the first bit and the second bit, and sort of joining the two together.
No, it is quite abrupt. The point at which it sort of cuts off, and then suddenly you have reports to the academy and reports to yada yada. But no, it's a very jarring shift. because you're caught up, inside other people's
Yes,
heads.
that's right.
Who are then caught up inside other
Yeah.
people's heads.
Well, that's also, it's almost like a game of Chinese whispers, because it starts with, okay, they arrive in the eruption, and then the sloth starts scratching people,
Yeah.
and then there's his assistant. You move from the
Yes.
tycoon to the assistant.
Yes.
And then there's all these sort of rather erotic fantasies, which is very
Yeah.
beautifully done. Because that could have got quite tawdry. You did that very well. So I don't know how you did that.
Well, particularly
Erotica
because obviously
had the future there for it, but,
the sloth
and
is
then-
non-denominational. It's an
Exactly,
equal opportunity
yeah.
pervert.
Yes.
So,
I like the word
Yes.
the difference of humour.
Because the voice is extraordinary.
Yes.
In it.
Yes.
You get the voice
I
really
needed,
well.
I mean, this
Yeah.
is one of the
You know.
conversations I had very early on with Caroline, the editor. I said, look, I need to up the register in English,
Right.
particularly
Okay.
of Selden. I need him to be condescending, but for that I need to use what Kurt Vonnegut used to call
have to
50-cent words.
And change your sentence in many ways.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
But I need to do that because he is part of
Yeah.
a class, I mean, more or less a caste in Argentina. And the signifiers in the Spanish aren't huge, but they have mostly to do with places and people and whatever. The only way I can convey this is by shifting register, so that the register of his voice, the register of his assistant's voice, and then the register of anybody else needs to shift.
Then there's also the setting, though, because they also end up in this rather dilapidated
Yes.
farm somewhere.
Yeah.
So the symbolism of that. So they arrive in the city, and then there's
They're
a
brought
chic
to civilization,
neighbourhood,
yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
suddenly they end up in this sort of completely dilapidated
But it shouldn't
farm.
have been dilapidated. It's only because the person that was managing it, the
was it?
Irish
So what
guy,
was
had
going
been
on?
sort of
So
doing
what's
up
going
all
on
his
there?
All our
That's
fault.
what I-
Yeah.
So what's going on? Because suddenly that I just suddenly thought, because there is a lot of metaphorical stuff in. You sort of think, well, what that farm symbolises,
But part of it is also that we have, quote unquote, rescued, quote unquote, savages from the
yeah, of
jungle.
course. Oh, gosh,
we have
yes.
brought them to civilization,
Civilization,
and
and then
they
they
have
have
brought us back
into
into nature.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that is where they can survive,
Right,
and therefore that is
right, yes.
where we
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
survive
yeah,
with
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Because actually, the dangers of them being within Buenos Aires is problematic. This is the 30s. Aldous Huxley coined the term noble savage, and when his brother was very much in favour of eugenics. There is a sense that these people are not simply other in the way that we would use in French or in English, but they are in fact not. They are not human. They are not considered to be human, which is why the first connection, which is between Amado Dam, the guy who's got all the money, and one of these women, and he finds himself inside her head as she's running around Buenos Aires and attacking people in Harrods and whatever kind of thing, and it's brilliantly done and very, very funny. But he is quite literally being put inside the head of somebody he doesn't even actually consider to be a person. I mean, within his apartment, all the women live in that room and all the men live in that room, and
Does the
they're
language
hosed down
reflect
once a
this?
day.
Does-
Yes.
Yes, it is.
So do you read it out loud when you translate to get
Almost always. I mean, always dialogue,
Yes.
but very frequently. On a third draft, one of the things, on the third draft or fourth draft of the translation, certainly by the time you get to proofs, you read things out loud and you think, would my character say this?
Yes.
Because by this point, it is my character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The end result has to be mine. It cannot be a fudge. If I'm reading a third draft of something or whatever, I just think, okay, I need to get rid of a syllable in that sentence, and I can't explain to you why I need to get a syllable, rid of a syllable, but I do because it doesn't work the way it's working.
It's an instinctive thing. Yeah, of course.
And it's about
Yeah, it's a
sound,
thing,
and it is
it's
about
yeah.
reading aloud, and you think it flows in the original, whether French or Spanish or whatever, and actually here there's a good, and that is where you don't want to be, and it's a difficult thing for people to take on trust.
Well,
Actually,
inflections, because French doesn't have the inflections that English does.
no.
So
No.
Exactly.
No. But okay. So I mean, the people will say, "What is the most difficult word to translate in French?" The most difficult word to translate in French is "on,"
Oh,
Because-
I suppose it.
because
Are we on that one?
One
It's not one,
in
yeah,
the,
no, one, yeah.
one goes to the theatre on occasion.
Yeah, it sounds very, yes,
But the
really
thing is,
right
all, by and large,
Yeah.
in French
Yeah.
means either people do
Yes.
or we are doing.
Yeah,
On va au
yeah,
cinéma
yeah,
demain
yeah.
doesn't
Right.
mean is
Right,
one going
yeah.
to the cinema tomorrow. It means are we going to the cinema tomorrow? And so there are lots of shifts that you need to do.
endless, yeah.
And then there is that wonderful phrase, which you have also in Spanish, which is on se tutoie. So
Oui, on se
let us
tutoie.
shift our register and no longer refer to each other as vous or usted, but as tu. And this is a
yes,
question
that's a
that you
big
can
thing.
ask in French,
Yeah.
which is we know each other well enough now. Now, there are times when you can say, I think we can move on to first name terms or whatever, and that works well. But in the Perseverante, for example, in The Siege, there is a whole chapter which involves the arrest of a criminal, and he is referred to as usted all the way up to the last paragraph, when suddenly he is tu when he's arrested. And the thing that he finds most shocking, and this is the last sentence in the paragraph, in the chapter, is the thing that he found most shocking was the tutear. And so the only way for me to do this was to go back and have the police officer refer to him as sir. Several times during the opening of it, and then drop it and use his first name.
Yes.
Yes.
Losing that marker.
Yeah.
Because it's not a marker that we have anymore. We used to have it. I mean, thee and thou and you and ye, yes. So you was the formal, but also the plural, as it is in French. And thee was the singular, but also the more familiar. But we don't do that anymore, and therefore you have to find a way for those languages that do to, it can be a lot more complicated in other languages. I mean, in German, as Madame de Stael used to say, one cannot interrupt the Germans because one does not know what they're going to say until they reach the end of the sentence. And this is true because that's where the verb goes.
Yes.
I to town went, a friend met, and in a small cafe poisoned.
Yeah.
And so you don't know that poisoned is the verb until you've got to the end of the sentence. We don't have that. We have verb, subject, verb, object. So hiding that information, and sometimes a German writer will use that form in order to hide what it is that they are trying to write. And if you were translating from German or from Dutch, then actually you need to find a way to make sure that actually, and again, this is one of your considerations in translation. It is not simply tone and register and cadence, all of which are important. Humour, which is almost impossible, but therefore you basically need to make it up again.
Yeah.
Puns do not. I mean, puns transfer from one Romance to a language to another. So you might be able to use the same pun in, say, Portuguese and Spanish, just about. But otherwise they don't, and therefore what you need is a different pun. I'm not translating people, I am reinventing the joke because there is no way around reinventing the joke. Otherwise
It works
it's not
really
funny.
well. But that is also good translation. You could get even then, it works really well because you
If it-
get the same feeling. There's also
Yeah.
the essence, the meaning, the
Yeah,
essence.
yeah.
That it's if you still get convey the vibe or the
Yeah.
whatever, and which you do. So that's really.
I think somewhere
Yeah.
it suggests that he's written another couple of books which go alongside this.
He has,
And
yes.
have you translated those?
I have not. So this is the first of his that has been
right.
translated. Okay, so one of the things that English language publishers look at is they don't really care how well your book did in your own country, if you're Spanish or whatever.
They look at prizes.
They look
and
at
things.
prizes, but they also look
yeah.
at how it worked in other languages.
In other languages, yeah. And that's one of the
So
things. There's all
if
the
your book was
benchmarks,
big
yeah.
in France, that's one thing. But if it also sold in Germany, I don't mean just you sold the rights and they published it,
No.
and
It sold
Italy and
well,
Spain,
yeah.
and it also sold well there,
Yeah, and won
then they're
prizes.
thinking, okay, maybe we need to take this person seriously.
Yeah, they like a slew of prizes, if possible, across as many countries as possible. But the other thing is also publishing has changed a hell of a lot. When I first came in, I mean, I, of course, read French, so I did an awful lot of French books when I was a publisher for 8 years. But also you had far more publishers. You had Calder was around, there were amazing publishers. They read other languages. I'm afraid there's also a published problem now. Fewer publishers in-house read other languages.
You know, what happens is they get sent books, they send them out for a reader's report, you do a reader's report, so you send it back. If it's positive, they'll get a second one. If it's negative, they'll just turn it down flat.
What's the translations?
Yeah, so they can't read the books. So they ask somebody else to write a report.
I see.
That's right.
They don't really want you to talk about the plot, they want you to say, this is very like this, and it would appeal to people who do this, who do that, who do whatever.
Yeah, they want
what they want is a
analysis.
sales argument.
They want a sales argument.
What they want are what they love to call comps. Comps are comparisons. So that if you can say, this is like a cross between Patrick Suskind and, you know, Isabel Allende, and they'll go, I've heard of them. They sell copies. And that's, you know, and that is your problem. The other fundamental thing that has changed, and this is not true of smaller publishers, of the independents at the moment, of Fitzcarraldo and Charco and whatever, is publishers historically publish authors. You do not just publish a book. If you believe in an author, you follow the author. And that is what the so-called Big Five no longer do, because they consider books to be product in the same way that supermarkets have product.
To translate, you have to get inside this writer's mind, don't you? You have to get inside.
Okay, so many years ago, my lovely, lovely agent, no longer with us, David Miller, said to me, if you're going to make any money, you need to write more books and translate fewer books. And I said, David, you honestly don't understand. As a translator, I get to write books I could never have written, that I could never have imagined, that I could never have, you know. I have written books that are set in East Africa, West Africa. I have written books that take place on continents among peoples that I understand only at second hand. And I am writing those books because actually by the time I'm finished, they are mine.
Go inside.
Whereas actually, if it's just me, okay, I mean, the stuff I can write, but, you know, I cannot write the great West African post-colonial novel. But I have written it. It is called Waiting for the Wild Beasts to Vote by Amadou Kourouma. So it's a very different kind of pleasure and a very different kind of satisfaction. It's a bit like asking a pianist why he doesn't compose more. I have written, I quite like writing, but it's a very different thing. What you're attempting to do is different.
I'm thinking of myself, and I can sense my difference when I'm speaking French versus when I'm speaking English.
I'm a completely different person in multiple languages. And I never made that decision.
No.
I had assumed, and many editors assume this, and quite a lot of authors assume this, is that human beings broadly say much the same things, they just use different words. And that is simply not true. Language creates the way in which you think, and the way in which you speak, and the way in which you write. And once you got that, then actually you realise this is completely different. You know, actually, you know, I mean...
Well, language is not about words, it's body language.
Yeah, of course.
We're communicating through tone and movement. Then words, which came much... Our words are very young.
No, I wanted to ask some of our other...
We should perhaps get back to the actual book.
No, but listening, what you thought about the book or the discussion generally, actually very interesting to hear, and also what you've enjoyed perhaps.
If you don't put your hand up, I will point at you.
Yes, you know, it's just interesting to hear.
I actually had a question. There is this concept of the folding, and I was wondering if there was...
There is this concept of the folding. I mean, it is never explained in the text, and I did ask Roque, you know, it's a sort of spiritual thing. I liked the idea of it. I liked the idea that somehow, for the indigenous peoples, things like space or time could be folded. But I think that he left it, I mean, not just vague, but slightly poetic.
So, as a translator, do you ever struggle with a translation, not because of the technicality of what you're trying to do and finding the right words, but because you have personally struggled with the subject matter?
Yes. Yes, that does happen. I mean, and there is subject matter that it is worth struggling for. And there is subject matter where actually I should have made a different decision and not decided to translate this book.
Much of the book's shock comes from how the horror, for me, the horror is like, oh my God, it's normalised, it's institutionalised, but it's completely understandable, because that's a key, to me, that was a key point reading it.
I think
so that's why just the gratuitous
I think
titillation,
it's crucial
it's very important, but it's not just if it was just gratuitous, oh look, and that's how it works. That's where horror, the overtops, it works well when you do feel there is an absolutely valid thing underneath it.
No, what is fascinating about this, and I think it is crucial to what this book does, it takes racism, the othering of cultures rather than the attempt to understand them, the othering of other religious or spiritual practices, and it says, what can we do? How can we control people, or how can we make money? And from the beginning, at the beginning, all they want to do is make money. Then they discover, actually, they have discovered something that can do much more than that. It can be used to control a whole society, and that is what this is. I mean, that is historically, of course, what we do.
You justify the unjustifiable.
Well, I mean, owning slaves. I mean, you go back to the Bible and you say, the Bible says we're allowed to own slaves. No, it's there's a lot of Argentinian, particularly what people would call body horror, which comes from a term used by David Cronenberg for his movies. So Mariana Enriquez, this is what Roque is doing as well. But these are attempting to explore things that have nothing to do with... They are using horror to explore other things. Samantha Schweblin, to some extent, does this in Fever Dream, and the novel I'm currently translating uses horror to explore what's usually called the Black Decade, so the junta from the late 70s to the early 80s. The horror is not an end in itself. The horror is an exploration of precisely what their regime was. One of the things that speculative fiction or, genre fiction, whether crime or horror fiction or science fiction or whatever, can do and does do is allow us to look at the world that we're already living in. Most of it is not about, apart from Asimov, or, there are a couple of what are called hard science who are interested in what technology might be. Quite a lot of science fiction, quite a lot of fantasy fiction is about who are we, what are we doing to each other, what does it mean if we do this?
Sadly, we're running out of time, so I need to bring this wonderful conversation to a close. Thank you all for being such thoughtful, engaged participants, and a very special thank you to our superb guest translator, Frank Wynne, for guiding us through the nuances of his translation of Roque Larraquy's The National Telepathy. If you'd like to read the book or recommend it to a friend, by all means visit our virtual BookBlast bookshop at bookshop.org.uk. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to being with you at our next book club discussion.